My name is Daniel Marks, and I write books. And this day and age, it seems like everyone's doing that, so I might as well be just telling you I'm an alcoholic. Seems to go hand in hand with writing. I'm not actually an alcoholic. I'm not sure I'm that much of a writer either, but I'm one hell of a procrastinator. As you'll soon be able to tell from this hastily compiled how-to video. Normally when I do vlogs, I kind of make a little outline for like what I'm gonna talk about, just kind of like bullet pointed, which is at least moderately interesting because it's kind of the same way I approach writing books. Actually, that's probably the second step. The first thing is I come up with the idea, and that seems to be the big question that happens at any author event is where do you come up with your ideas? Well, it comes from just about anywhere. Really. The question is not where the ideas come from, is whether you can execute the idea and get it into something that other people will be interested in. And that's kind of it, because ideas they're a dime a dozen. I just had 4 ideas. I didn't have any ideas. It was just a low hum. Let me tell you a little bit about my process. A while back, someone asked me if I would make a video about my writing routine and how it kind of worked out, how I approached writing, and this is going to be that video. And you know what? The idea that I could teach you how to do anything is absolutely unrealistic. Unless you're completely as scattered and as freeform in thinking as I am, this isn't going to work for you. Whatever my initial idea is, whether it's a girl who is murdered by a serial killer and finds a way to get back into our world through purgatory's cracks, or whether it's a boy who's on the run from a juvenile hall who can see people's desires and intentions as shadow figures. Whatever my initial idea is, I'd like to start right in the middle of the action. Tell all the backstory like you've typed it all up, except you never did. And you get to the point where it just starts to get really exciting, and then you tear off the front part and throw it away and start right at the exciting part. I think that is the perfect place to start a book. And it also is the perfect place to really tell you what the character wants to do and what kind of tone you want to use. You've got to figure out who's going to carry out your idea, whatever that idea is. So you're going to have to come up with your character. You're going to have to come up with what I like to call a bullet. And the bullet is the one moment, the singular thing that sets your story in motion. That it's like a bullet gets fired off, your main character has to follow that bullet to the end. And it has to be followed. Whether it's some kind of a quest story, or whether it's just a generic adventure, or whether it's a sort of a romantic inkling, whatever it is, every story has a bullet, and you can identify it. And so once you've come up with your character, your bullet, you can start putting things around it, wrapping it, just like padding it in, packing it in like you would pack salt into an open wound. And I don't use that jokingly. I mean, if you're going to have a character that you're going to love, you better throw crap at them and make them hurt. That's kind of the entire idea behind writing, is that an author takes a character that they love and they make them feel pain, and they mess with them and they screw them up, and that's what makes them interesting, because it wouldn't feel real unless a whole bunch of barriers get thrown up. I mean, because that's kind of what happens to all of us. The next part is a really hard thing for people who don't write to wrap their heads around, and that is that a good percentage of writing doesn't have anything to do with the writer being at the computer typing or jotting down notes or anything like that. There's a great deal of percolating that goes on to develop characters that are interesting and unique and original, and situations that are completely a part of the writer's sort of personality and experiential background. When they say write what you know, and I've talked about write what you know before, but I'll reiterate, when they say that, it means that whatever you're writing has to be filtered through your perceptions and your experience. And so if you're writing about something that is completely outside of your realm of understanding, you need to bring to that the same thing that it would be if you were in that situation yourself. So what kind of experience, what kind of emotion, what kind of feelings and thoughts and stuff would you have as an author or as a person who would be in that situation? It's kind of like method acting. So you get a genuine feeling, and the key word here is genuine. A genuine, honest impression of what the character feels, thinks, how they react, their emotions, all those kind of things based on the situational context. So it sounds like a lot to deal with. And it is. It's a lot to deal with. But it's something that needs to be thought about, and that's the piece. I have an idea. I think about the story just sort of in loose bullet points, like I talked about earlier. And then I percolate. I percolate about stories for years. I think Velveteen's a 5-year-old idea. So, yeah. And I didn't start writing Velveteen until 2010. So it's been a while. Anyway, so you percolate and you kind of get an idea about what happens, and then you sit down to write. So that could take months. That could literally take months. And in the in-between times, it could take another month or two to kind of figure it all out. Some people write much quicker. Some people might write much quicker, and I really envy that because they tend to, kind of follow their fingers. I don't know what they do. I percolate. I'm a percolator. Then when I come out of that period of thinking and dwelling about character and the story and the bullet and all that stuff, I'll generally come up with the idea of how the book is going to end. And I usually like it to end at a much higher level of tension and action as the first chapter represents. I'll have the ending. I'll have a few key scenes that I sort of love, really like set piecey stuff. I like to be very descriptive and things like that. So those are all like in my head. And then I'll sit down and write the first chapter. And the first chapter to me is huge. And I really cannot continue writing a story unless I get the first chapter perfect. I tend to edit it and edit it and edit it. That's why NaNoWriMo never works for me, because I cannot sit down and write straight through a draft without editing it. It's like, I feel like it wastes my time because I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at knowing how things should be until I have clearly developed the character, the story, and the bullet. And so I spend a great deal of time revising that, and that's why it's difficult for me to write proposals. Like I've been telling you, I've been writing proposals for the next book that I owe Random House or Delacorte. And so it's hard because I've got 3 of these chapters now that I'm really focusing on getting the perfect start to, and that really slows me down. But in the end, I think it makes it a much better. It makes it a much better story because I do a lot of the sort of the character development within that chapter, and so I know how my character reacts. The second chapter is much easier. It goes on from there. The more I'm in the writing process, the more I get ideas for scenes. And I love writing scenes. I think that I'm basically a scene writer. So I don't think in chapters. I think in interconnected scenes and set pieces and things like that. I should probably write screenplays. And I have written one, but whatever. So anyway, once I've got that first chapter done to my satisfaction, I can get going and I can write other stuff. And that's basically, the book kind of comes together from there. So if you'd like to see what I do after I come up with the first draft, you can watch my video on the YA Rebels about revisions here. Or if you'd just like to see me make a fool of myself, there's this one of me dancing.